Hello, this is Josip from Siemens SRL, and this is a short demonstration about the Data Access API. Um, so, the actors involved in the data transfer is the data space, which is connected to the Data Access API through a data connector. The Data Access API will wait for requests from the data access client and will transfer data from the data space through the data access API to the data access client by using a non-repudiation protocol. The consumer afterwards can save the file locally or he can transfer it to a data analytics app. Okay, so in order to showcase this demonstration, as a prerequisite, there is a need to have a data sharing agreement, and the data sharing agreement uh, can be retrieved after the consumer and the provider agree on a contract which they both sign. So once the contract is signed uh, between the consumer and the provider, we the provider has to do a couple of things. So the first thing would be to uh, disclose the data sharing agreement to data access API. So for example, um, okay, so here I have already a data sharing agreement that I created between the consumer and the provider. So I can use this one to disclose it to data access API. Okay, so after it is disclosed, the next thing the provider has to do is um, to register the batch connector. So in order to do that, the the provider has to know the offering ID. So I can get this from here. So I can complete it. I'll have to register the URL of the batch connector. So in my case, the batch connector is deployed here, so I can just write it down. Okay, and I will have to register it. So it prompts me that the batch connector is already registered. So, for example, if so once this is done, the consumer can actually see uh, based on the offering what files he can transfer. So if I run this, I can get a list of files, and these files come from this data source. So you can see the files here. So this is MindSphere, which acts as a data source for our example. And it is connected via the batch connector to the data access API. So once the consumer can see what files he has access to, he could of course authenticate to the data access API. So for example, okay, I can use this endpoint to log in as a consumer, which is exposed by the data access. I will have to pair the wallet. Okay, after pairing it, it prompts me to disclose the consumer credentials. I sign it and I get back this access token, which I can use to authorize requests. And to see an example of a transfer, I can just start with this. Let's say let's get a file, agreement ID, which we should know it after we um, create a contract between the consumer and the provider. The consumer will get an agreement ID. And after executing it, we get the next block. Okay, let's copy this and see what happens. Okay, so here we get block ID, the next block ID, the proof for this for the data that was transferred, and the cipher block, which is uh, the data transferred from the data source encrypted. Okay, so once we have this, uh, we can actually uh, make use of a script to display how the data transfer works. So for this, as a consumer, I can use this small script that I created to interact with the data access API. And there are a couple of information that I need beforehand. So the first one will be uh, the data sharing agreement, which can be retrieved after a contract is agreed upon. A bearer token, which I can use the one that I already created. The agreement ID, which is known after the contract is signed. The name of the file that I want to transfer. The wallet session master key, which can be retrieved as well by connecting to the wallet API and just copy it from here after connecting to the wallet. And of course for the block ID and block acknowledge, which will always start as null and null. So I will run this script now. Okay, so I'll be prompted to share the data sharing agreement. The data transfer starts, the file is imported, and I should be able to see it here. So this is the file that can be found in the data source. So this is the way a consumer can retrieve a file from a data source through the data access API.